components in the upper limb examination. That is the examination of the motor system, the examination of the sensory system, and testing of coordination. First, we will examine the motor system. This has 4 components, that's inspection and testing of muscle tone, testing of muscle power, and finally the testing of deep tendon reflexes. For inspection, you have to make sure that the upper limbs are well exposed as well as the upper part of the back. It's very important to compare the 2 sides as you go along. First, you examine for the muscle bulk proximally as well as distally. You inspect for dorsal guttering and on the palm aspect to see whether there is any wasting over the thenar or the hypothenar eminences. And if there is any wasting, it's very important to check for muscle fasciculations. You should also look for any involuntary movements such as tremor or any deformities such as the wrist drop and the claw hand. To detect mild weakness of upper limbs, you can ask the patient to keep the hands together and close his eyes. Then the hand with the weakness will slowly drift down. Next, we test for muscle tone. The muscle tone could be increased or diminished. And when the muscle tone is increased, it could be of lead pipe type or clasp knife type. To test the muscle tone, the patient has to be relaxed. Bend the elbow, pronate and supinate the forearm, and if the tone is increased, test for cogwheeling at the wrist. And compare your findings with those of the other arm. When you test muscle power, it is important to grade the power. Muscle power is graded from 0 to 5. Grade 0 is no movement at all, and grade 5 is completely normal power. Grade 4 power is a mild reduction in power, but still the patient can move against resistance. In grade 3 power, the patient cannot move against resistance, but can move the limb against gravity. In power grade 2, the movement against gravity is not possible. However, if you eliminate gravity, then the patient can move the limb. Then, atta namanagami. This movement is against gravity. And this is how you eliminate gravity for the same movement. Right? Then namanna balanna. In power grade 1, you can only observe a flicker of movement of the muscle. It is not important to test the power of all the muscle groups. We only test the power of muscle groups with some localizing value. To test the movements at the shoulder, this movement, that is the first 30 degrees of abduction, tests the power of supraspinatus. Here the power of deltoids is tested. The external rotation of the shoulder tests the power of infraspinatus. There are 2 other muscle groups which need to be tested at the shoulder. One is serratus anterior, the other one is rhomboids. This is the method of testing the serratus anterior. You get the patient to push against a wall and observe for the winging of the scapula. Next, you test the rhomboids. ගාමිනී අත් දෙක අරගෙන ඉනේ තියාගන්න දෙපැත්තේ. කළා පිටිපැත්තට තල්ලු කරන්න. මට තල්ලු කරන්න දෙන්න එපා. This is the way to test the rhomboids. The biceps are tested by getting the patient to flex the elbow. ඔයා අත හොඳට තද කරලා තියාගන්න. මට අදින්න දෙන්න එපා. Right. And compare the sides. Next we test the triceps. දැන් ඔයා මගේ අත තල්ලු කරන්න. By elbow extension. Make it ආපහු තල්ලු කරන්න. Next we test wrist flexion. අත මෙන්න මෙහෙම කරලා තියාගන්න. Right, තල්ලු කරන්න දෙන්න එපා මට. මේ අතෙත්. Right. Next we test the wrist extensors. මේක උඩට තියාගන්න හොඳට ගුලි කරලා මිටිය. Here we are testing the small muscles of the hand. First we will test the finger abductors. ඇඟිලි ඈත් කරන්න ගාමිනී. පළල් කරලා තියාගන්න මට ලං කරන්න දෙන්න එපා. Next we test the finger adductors. මේ කාඩ් එක ඔයා තද කරලා ඇඟිලි දෙකක් මැදින් අල්ල ගන්න. මට ගලවන්න දෙන්න එපා. right මේකේ මේ පැත්තෙන් දැන් අත් දෙක අනිත් පැත්ත හරවන්න. Now we are testing the movements of the thumb. මහපට ඇඟිල්ල මෙහෙම උඩට ගේන්න දෙකේම. හොලවන්න එපා. This tests the power of abductor pollicis brevis. දැන් මෙහෙම කරන්න. ඇඟිලි තුඩවල් දෙක ගාවන්න මට ගලවන්න දෙන්න එපා. This is the way to test the opponent's pollicis. මේ ඇඟිලි තද කරලා තියාගන්න. Let's proceed to test the tendon reflexors. To test the biceps jerk, support the elbow and keep the elbow at 90 degrees. Place your thumb over the biceps tendon and tap the thumb. The response observed is a contraction of the biceps as well as the flexion of the elbow. Next, test the triceps jerk. බුරුල් කරලා තියාගන්න පණ නැති කරලා. Support the patient's elbow and tap the triceps tendon. Observe for the contraction of the triceps. To test the supinator jerk, tap the brachioradialis tendon and observe for the contraction of the brachioradialis. බුරුල් කළා පන්නති කළොම තියාගන්න. Coordination is tested by the finger nose test and dysdiadochokinesia. This is how you perform the finger nose test. ගාමිනී ඔයාගේ මේ අත දිග ඇරලා ඇඟිලි තුඩෙන් නහය තුඩ අල්ලන්න. හරි. දැන් මේ අතිනුත් කරන්නේ මේ විදිහට. හරි. දැන් ඔයා මේ ඇඟිලි තුඩෙන් ඔයාගේ නහය තුඩ අල්ලලා මගේ ඇඟිලි තුඩත් අල්ලන්න. Here the examiner moves the finger and moves the targets for the patient. Right. This is how we test for dysdiadochokinesia. ඔයා ඔයාගේ අත අරගෙන මෙහෙම මාරුවට ඉක්මනට ගහන්න. දැන් අනිත් පැත්තට. The sensory modalities tested are pain, touch, joint position sense, and where relevant, temperature. You test pain with a toothpick and demonstrate pain by pricking on the patient's forehead. What? අනිනවා දැනෙනවද?
ඔව්.
Then get the patient to close his eyes, and each time you prick him, ask him to indicate if he feels pain and not near touch. දැන් ඔය ඇස් දෙක වහගන්න. ඒ විදිහට අනිනවා දැනෙනකොට මට දැනෙනවා කියලා කියන්න. ඔව් කියලා කියන්න. ඒ කියන්නේ අනිනවා දැනෙනොත් නිකන් දැනලා නෙමෙයි. You have to test each dermatome and compare the two sides as you go along.
ඔව්. 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 ඔව්.
To test for touch, you do the same with a piece of cotton wool. However, you have to make sure that you just touch the patient with the cotton wool and not rub it over his skin. It is important to ask the patient if he feels a difference of sensation on the two sides. That is when you are testing pain and touch both. When testing joint position sense, you move the distal phalanx of the patient's index finger up and down. But it's very important to fix the distal phalanx by holding the finger proximally, and you have to hold the finger on either side and not in the direction of movement. Get the patient to identify the movement. මේක උඩ, මේක පහළ. දැන් ඇස් දෙක වහගන්න. Next, ask him to close his eyes and then ask him to indicate the direction of movement. මේ මොකද ගාමිනී?
උඩ.
මේක.
උඩ.
මේක.
පහළ.
මේක.
පහළ.
මේක.
පහළ.
Temperature is tested using two test tubes, one filled with warm water, the other filled with cold water. You touch the patient's skin with each test tube and ask him to indicate whether it's warm or cold. But make sure that the patient's eyes are closed during the testing. At the end of neurological examination of the upper limb, you should be able to answer the two cardinal questions in neurology. That is, what is the lesion and where is the lesion? Oh, Mr. Tigamini.